Thank you for listening to this PodcastOne production. Now available on Apple Podcasts, PodcastOne, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
PodcastOne presents the Steve Austin Show Classics.
I am joined by my lovely wife, Kristen, who's sitting cross-legged on the bed, and Hershey the Wonder Dog, my chocolate lab who's spoiled rotten, is laying in front of her. Shona the Black Lab is beside her, and Moolah the Silver Lab, our new addition, is laying on the other corner of the bed. And we're tucked away in a bedroom to get away from all the other hunters, which is my family, and have a little peace and quiet in here so I can open up a can of audio whoop-ass for you. Before I take care of business, let me say hi to my wife, Kristen. How are you?
I'm doing well, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing fine, honey. Thanks for asking. Hey, before you and me start shooting the breeze, you know I got to start things off by taking care of my sponsors. LouMosty.com is one of them. I've been doing this daily, and it's definitely improving my memory and my focus. If you haven't checked it out, you should at LouMosty.com and tell him you heard it from me, the working man, Steve Austin. That's right. One more thank you before we get rolling today. I need to thank another sponsor, and that sponsor is Hulu Plus. They know I do this show for the working man and the working woman, so that's why they've got a great deal for my listeners. That's right, my listeners, a 2-week free trial. Just go to HuluPlus.com/Steve. That's HuluPlus.com/Steve. Hulu Plus and LouMosty.com are why I can keep doing this show for you for Free. That spells free. So show them a little love if you can. All right, Kristen, what's happening? We're down here at the ranch, the Broken Skull Ranch, in the middle of nowhere. How you holding up?
I'm holding up. We have a lot of work to do down here.
I know, and that's the thing. I tell everybody in Los Angeles that I'm down here for like 2 months to deer hunt, but nobody really has a concept of what goes on out here at the Broken Skull Ranch. This place needs to be a reality show because I could take mere mortals and forge them into working machines. That's an idea right there, Kristen.
Yes, it is.
But there is a lot of work to do out here. We got to clean so many things up. We got so many things to organize. What else we got to do?
Get the vehicles cleaned up because we had bad rains. They're all muddy.
It's muddy as hell out here right now. But it's been good. We've had some cold fronts, and that's been good because the deer are moving. And it sucks because when you're sitting in a deer stand, it's 90 degrees, which we were a couple of weeks ago. That's no good. But because we've had so much rain, to get to the ranch, you've got to go 15 miles down a gravel road. And when it rains like hell, which it did when we first got here, the vehicles just get trashed.
Yeah.
So, and then you got to soak that mud off. You don't just try to power wash it off with one go. You kind of soak it off in layers and then hit it with the power washer. And that, and along with doing our deer count, you know, we've got to take a certain amount of deer this year, which is an astronomical number. And everything that we take off the ranch is eaten by a human being. My wife is a vegetarian and an animal lover, as am I, but I'm passionate about my deer hunting. Kristen, you haven't been able to go to your Zumba class for now 3 weeks. Are you in withdrawals?
Yes.
My wife loves Zumba. If there's one thing my wife loves, it's Zumba. Why do you like Zumba so much?
It's an hour of fun.
Yeah, but you got that DVD. You got the whole kit.
That's
it cost like $99 back in the day. I remember when you got it. It's high quality. I dig it. I like the music. Now, I would never do Zumba. I think my knees might explode. Why do you love it so much?
Well, it's not like when you have a DVD, you want to actually just stand in front of a TV set and dance. It's not.
I just like to watch because I like to watch them dance, and I like when what's that guy that invented it?
Beto.
Yeah, Beto. I like when Beto does the alligator chop. What's it called?
I don't know, alligator chop.
Yeah, with the guy that does the little like karate chops up in the air. I just think it's the funniest thing.
I like watching the video better than I do doing the Zumba to the video.
See, if I could just get me like a 12-pack of Sierra Nevada Torpedo Extra IPA and just watch the DVD and get in shape at the same time, I would have a fitness craze.
Yeah.
This could be bigger than Zumba. I'm bullshitting you, folks. That ain't never going to happen. Hey, so what else is going on out here? Because you're a little more social than I am. Are you jonesing for anything else? Because we always like to eat sushi once a week in L.A.
Yeah, I miss the sushi once a week.
But now we've been eating Mexican food once a week. And I love me some Mexican food. It's my favorite food in the world. But there ain't a single healthy Mexican food item that I like. So every time I go, I gain like 16 pounds.
Yeah.
And you get
my chalupas.
The chalupas with refried beans and cheese and guacamole
lettuce.
And lettuce.
Yeah.
No tomatoes?
Oh, they put tomatoes, yeah.
Tomatoes. Hey, you've been going to the deer stand a lot, and you've been seeing some good bucks.
Yeah.
So, are you having fun?
Yeah, it's a peaceful hour just sitting there watching animals.
So I'm a hunter and you're a non-hunter, but you love sitting in the deer stand and enjoying nature.
Yeah.
So it's not all about hunting and killing out here, folks. It's about enjoying the outdoor lifestyle.
Yeah, I love sitting in the deer stand just looking at the deer and seeing what other creatures come out and, watching them interact.
Hey, before we sat down to do this podcast today, and today in a little bit I'm going to be talking to a fellow from the business of professional wrestling, but we were talking about how much work we got to do out here at the ranch. A lot of people think when I come out here to the ranch I'm just relaxing or deer hunting. We got a bunch of shit we got to do.
Yeah, we just redid our pavilion floor, which we had to power wash 14 times.
And we sealed it up.
Sealed it up, and that took a couple days. And
we moved all the stuff, all the gym out. The Fort Knox safe we moved out. Me and Kristen and at Ted Fowler 361, who's down here helping us out and hanging out and deer hunting with us. So, but also with that, I mean, we got to get the whole ranch in shape before we leave because we won't be back for another couple of months.
Yeah, and did you forget we didn't have a hot water heater for a couple of days?
Oh yeah, man, we had a what was it, a fuse?
The
breaker.
element went out, and the breaker also went out.
One of the elements went out in the water heater, but then the breaker went, and we had to get an electrician out here. And when you're in the middle of nowhere and you want an electrician just to appear out of nowhere, presto, it don't happen like that. So we had to go next doors to the other gimmick house we got out here and shower out there. And you know what? It makes you appreciate, I guess, I'm a pretty tough guy, but, when I take a shower, I like some hot water.
Yeah, especially when it's 30 degrees outside.
Yeah, when you got to walk over to the other house. These are trailer houses. I ain't trying to sound like a hot shot, folks. When you got to walk across the pavilion in the cold to take a hot shower, it kind of sucks.
Yeah, it does.
And don't get me wrong, I can go a couple of days without a shower, but my wife can't.
No, and it's tough to wash dishes with cold water.
Oh, yeah, because you can't get the grease off.
Yeah.
Well, we're clean freaks anyway. Well, again. Hey, check it out. Kristen, are you going to come back and wrap this show up with me in a little bit?
If I'm not too busy.
All right, if she's not too busy, babe. Before we get to the interview with my guest, I want to tell you guys about Sherry's Berries. Kristen, you've heard about Sherry's Berries. This is a great gift if you still got some last-minute shopping to take care of. You can send everyone giant dipped strawberries from Sherry's Berries for only $19.99. And for listeners of the Steve Austin Show, I've got an even sweeter deal. You can double the berries for only $10 more. These are some of the biggest strawberries I have ever seen, and they're dipped in white chocolate, milk chocolate, and nuts. But the only way to get this special $19.99 deal is to visit berries.com. That's BERRIES.com. Click on the microphone in the top right corner and type in Unleashed. I don't know anyone who doesn't love Sherry's Berries. I love me some Sherry's Berries. So go to berries.com, click on the microphone, and type in Unleashed. And consider your holiday shopping done. Kristen, every now and then, I always ask people to send me questions, suggestions, or comments to questions at steveaustinshow.com. So, every day I check the email for the show.
Yes.
Religiously. I read every single email that comes in. I can't respond to all of them, but you see me read them.
Yeah.
So I got this one in just the other day. And it goes like this. Hello, my name is Kevin Steen. I'm an independent pro wrestler and friend of Colt Cabana. You guys actually talked about me a little in your podcast with him a few weeks ago. This isn't actually a question, but more of a thank you. It turns out you gave me the best advice I ever received back in 2005, and that advice changed my entire career. My buddy and I were on our way to a show in Los Angeles and had a layover in Dallas, and you were on the same flight as us. We went up to you at the gate and asked for a picture, and you were as nice to us as anybody's ever been. We talked wrestling a bit, and before you got on the plane, I asked you for one piece of advice. And you said, whatever you do, don't ever stop running your mouth. That plancha shit will kill you. I took that to heart and have since become known for my big mouth. It's an integral part of my shtick, and has helped me get to where I am today. My dad saw me grow up on your antics. I was a huge Stone Cold fan, still am. And when he listened to your podcast and heard you say that you had heard of me, man, I can't tell you how happy and proud that made him. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for the countless hours of entertainment. Thanks for the advice, and thanks for the mention on your podcast. Sorry for using this email address and not sending an actual question. Take care. Kevin, I read that damn email, and I vaguely remember that moment in 2005. Sure don't remember what the cat looked like, but I got on YouTube and I started watching some of his matches, and I was very impressed because this cat can work his ass off, and he does a bunch of very unique stuff, and you can follow him on Twitter at FightSteenFight. His website is kevinsteenwrestles.com, and he has a YouTube channel called Kevin's Weekend Escapades. There was also a thing on YouTube called The Top 95 Moves of Kevin Steen. If you haven't seen that, you ought to check it out because this kid's pretty special. So I figured, what the hell? This kid's nice enough to send in a damn email and bring that up. And I started searching around and looking on the roster. And, hey, man, why not just have this son of a bitch on the show? So I reached out to Kevin, emailed him back, and he sent me his phone number. And that's who my guest is today. Ring of Honor, pro wrestling gorilla, independent wrestler, one bad son of a bitch, Kevin Steen.
Steve Austin, Unleashed.
All right, so I'm talking to Kevin Steen here on my new system. I got my little headphones on. I got my Blue Yeti mic. Kevin, how are you doing? Welcome to the Steve Austin Show. What's happening?
I'm great. Thanks a lot for having me, man. It's a huge thrill for me to be talking to you. I hope you know this.
Hey, man, it was just interesting that you sent me the email. And I said, hey, man, I started reading this email. I said, man, I got to give this cat a call and get him on the show. And then I said, hey, I'm trying to get something done, but, maybe I'll just talk to him for 15, 20 minutes. And I started watching more and more of your stuff on YouTube. And I said, man, this motherfucker can work. So I said, fuck that. We'll just talk for, an hour and open up a total can of audio whoop-ass. So, hey, man, let's go back to the story. Before I went to break, I read the email that you sent in, and going back to the year 2005 when you and I met at LAX Airport.
Yeah.
Tell me about that story from your perspective, where you guys were coming from or where you were going back in the day.
It was me and this wrestler, El Generico, who was also in the Indies. We came up together, we started in Montreal together for a company called IWS, and we were wrestling there in 2003. And then in 2004, we started, getting out there in the United States a little bit. And then by 2005, we were wrestling for this company in California called PWG, Pro Wrestling Gorilla. And we were on our way there. We had a layover, I believe it must have been in Dallas, I'm pretty sure. And it was our second layover of the day. We had we drove to Albany because we used to drive to Albany, New York to catch a flight because it was way cheaper than Montreal back then for for PWG. So we'd drive 4 hours to Albany. It was always, through the night from we'd leave at midnight, get there around 4 a.m., catch a 6 a.m. flight, something like that. And then I think we had a layover in Philly maybe, and then another layover in Dallas, and then on to L.A. So we were pretty exhausted, and I remember I was walking to a water fountain at the gate, and then I saw you standing over by the corner. But, I wasn't sure if it was you, just because...
I can blend into a crowd pretty good.
You're Steve Austin. I wasn't sure if I was seeing things, but then I realized it was definitely you. And you were kind of trying to be... You seemed like you were trying to stay a bit on your own, but I'm like, I can't not go up to him. So I went up to Generico, and I'm like, I didn't want to alert everybody around us, so I was trying to be quiet and saying, hey, come over here, we're gonna go see Stone Cold. And he didn't understand what I was saying. For some reason, he thought that I was about to get into a fight with somebody, and I needed backup. So he was following me and asking me, who are we gonna fight? I'm like, what are you talking about? We're in an airport. Why would we get into a fist fight? I'm like, we're gonna go talk to Steve Austin. And then he saw you. He's like, that's not Steve Austin. Oh shit, it is. So then we walked up to you, and we didn't want to bother you or anything, but you were great. It was no problem. It was no bother, and we ended up talking about wrestling a little. We took a picture with you, and then they called first class, which you were on, Mr. Fancy Pants, I guess, with a big first class ticket, and we were in economy. So right before, as you were about to leave, I'm like, hey, do you have just one piece of advice for us, anything at all? And then that's it. You said just run your mouth. Never stop running your mouth. And then you looked at Generico because he's, even back then, less back then, but even back then he was taller and skinnier than me. You just looked at him and said, that plancha shit will kill you, And then that's it. You were off. And then I remember we were all the way back, and we passed you on the way to our seats. And then we were we were both trying to figure out what we could do, like to thank you for the advice, and we were like, oh, maybe we could ask the stewardess to buy him a beer for us. Then we realized first class, you get that stuff for free. So we ended up just not doing anything, but we were pretty, like the woman sitting next to you looked like a businesswoman or whatever, and we were blown away that, like she had no idea of the wealth of knowledge about pro wrestling that was sitting next to her. So it's probably a good thing you weren't sitting near us, because we probably would have driven you crazy, to be honest.
Wait, that wasn't that flight that I had to climb out onto the wing and make an engine repair, was it?
No, I don't think that was it.
Hey, but I appreciate the thought. It's the thought that counts about sending that cocktail over there.
Yeah.
Hey, I was watching quite a few of your matches on YouTube before we spoke, and of course I've heard of you before. And of course, when I was talking to Colt Cabana, I mentioned you several times, as you and Colt know each other very well.
Yeah.
But I told you back in the day, and told Generico to watch out for that plancha shit. That shit will kill you. Run your mouth. So, first of all, let's talk about Generico. He's doing all that plancha stuff. How's he feeling these days?
Well, he's actually retired, El Generico. He's stopped wrestling. He he was originally from Tijuana, Mexico, but he's got an orphanage over there. But now there's this wrestler in NXT called Sami Zayn. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
He wrestles a lot like Generico. I think he was a big El Generico fan back in the day and studied a lot of El Generico tapes, and he does the exact same moves as El Generico, it turns out. And he seems to be feeling pretty good. So I assume that if Generico was still wrestling, he'd say he's doing pretty well and he's feeling all right as well.
Well, how old is Generico?
Generico is 29. So is Sami Zayn. They actually share a birthday, weirdly enough.
Well, man, dude, 29 is pretty young to be retired from the game.
Yeah, I mean, the duty called. He had his orphans back there. It's a whole thing. But then, like I said, Sami Zayn picked up the torch, and he's doing pretty good in NXT. So El Generico lives on through Sami Zayn, really.
So, dude, I was watching, some of your stuff, and you got a hell of an arsenal. And I told you we were going to start this interview at 1 p.m. your time, 12 o'clock my time, and I called you 15 minutes late. And the reason I called you 15 minutes late was because I was on YouTube watching the top 95 moves of Kevin Steen. Folks, if you are listening to my voice here on the Steve Austin Show, where twice a week I open up cans of audio whoop-ass, you must go to YouTube and watch the top 95 moves of Kevin Steen. It's some badass shit. Dude, when I was on top, on fire, white hot, I had like 3 fucking moves. If I would have known half the shit, hell, piss on that. If I would have done 15% of the shit you did, there ain't no telling what I would have done. How in the wide, wide world of sports did you come up with all this shit? Because it's some very, very good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the top 95 moves video. I've heard a lot about it, though, because I guess people, like a lot of people have watched it, and that's cool, but I don't even have myself the patience to watch myself for, 95 moves. And out of those 95, I assume I do like maybe 15 nowadays, but a lot of the stuff I came up with was just at the wrestling school. I trained with Jacques Rougeau, the Mountie, and, the way he ran his school is he would kind of show up and, walk around the ring while the guys were in the ring and somebody else really trained us, one of those. Yeah. But I mean, his input was very valuable. I appreciated it anytime he could help us out. And I was in his first class, so I think I got the most out of Rougeau that anybody who came up through him did. Because afterwards, he really started to take a back seat to the and just kind of stay out of the ring. But whenever he wasn't at the wrestling school, we could still go and work in the ring at our leisure. So I would go every day practically. And, me and some other guys would just be constantly in the ring every night. After school, I'd drive up there. It was like a 40-minute drive, but it was nothing, 40 minutes. Some people drove 8 hours to get trained and stuff like that. So I would drive up there every day I could, and other guys would join me, and we'd just work on some stuff. And that's how I came up with, my finishing move, the package pile driver. That's how I came up with most of the stuff I do that, you might have not seen anywhere else. It was just through trial and error, really. You know what I mean?
So what happens when you're doing trial and error and there's a gigantic error?
Yeah, I mean,
it's getting crash test dummies to to attempt this stuff for the first time.
The thing is, after by the time 2002 rolled around, I had been training with Rougeau for 2.5 years. So me and the other guys that would, at this point we were almost running the training for him. So not the younger necessarily, but the newer students would unfortunately have to take the brunt of the the trial and error like we were doing. But all of them were up for it, and nobody really ever got hurt. The only time somebody got hurt actually was I think somebody broke their collarbone on a choke slam. So nothing too bad happened there, but there's definitely some interesting stuff going on.
Hey, man, tell me about the package pile driver. When I was watching, some of your matches and stuff with Generico, the 95 moves, I saw the package pile driver. I said, man, I don't think I've ever seen that. I don't think I've ever seen anybody else do that. Did you invent that? Are you taking credit for that?
I do. I am taking credit for it. I've seen something similar to it, but I only saw it years after I came up with it. It's funny actually because I saw it. I was watching an old Jacques Rougeau tape, an old Mountie tape, and he did it. But he didn't do it like me. He kind of just grabbed the back of the guy's thighs, but without hooking the elbows the way I do, and then he just kind of rolled them on his legs and then kind of fell backwards with it. So it wasn't quite as impactful, but I hadn't seen him do that when I came up with it. It was another trial and error kind of thing. I was just picking up guys, and then I picked somebody up that way with the elbows and the legs tucked in, and I'm like, this might make a pretty good pile driver. And then I started doing it, and, other kids at the school were into it, and then I used it on a show, and by the reaction, I knew I had something,
Oh, it's devastating looking. Hey, let's go back to the school for a second. You said you were training there with Jacques for 2.5 years. Now, and towards the end of that, you were actually training people. But as you were learning, how much experience did you get? How long were you in the school until you had your first match?
I was in the school. I actually didn't start with Rougeau. I got trained by a French guy called Serge Jaudoin for maybe a month in the summer of 1998. I was 14 when I started training. I've been bothering my mom about, since I started watching wrestling when I was 11, I got to get into a wrestling school. They were like, well, you're a bit young. And then eventually through somebody at her work who knew Serge Jaudoin, I got into that school, and he said, yeah, you're 14. We could start training you slowly. And his school was in a barn, like outside under a barn. And the barn ended up collapsing on the ring a month after we started. So thankfully nobody was in the ring, but so that put an end to that. But I mean, he had taught me some pretty good basics, nothing too crazy, but I was just starting out, and I was a 14-year-old kid, so he didn't put me through anything too rough. But then a year went by, and I remember I was in school in back in the day, it was 1999, so the internet and computers weren't what it is today, but I was in computer class, and we were surfing the internet, and I saw on a Quebec wrestling website, the only one that existed, that Jacques Rougeau was opening his wrestling school in September of 1999. At that point, it was maybe, June. So I ran out of the class as it was going on. I remember my teacher yelling my name, like, what are you doing? And I ran out, called my mom immediately, and I had her call the number so that she could set up an appointment so that we could go see this. Because at that time, Jacques Rougeau, he was just fresh off, like, his last run in WWF. And he was a big deal in Quebec. His name, like his family name, is equivalent to the Harts, I would say. In Alberta, in Quebec, the Rougeaus are like synonym with pro wrestling.
I agree.
So it was a huge deal for me. So we went there on a Saturday morning, my dad, my mom, and myself, and Jacques. We actually saw. I remember my dad and I went to the bathroom, and we ran into Jacques there, and he actually didn't wash his hands as he exited, but we were so starstruck we didn't realize.
Jacques Rougeau didn't wash his hands after he went to the bathroom. I'm shocked.
He didn't bother, no. And then he was slamming us around and just slapping us in the face and pie-facing us in the ring and stuff. Anyway, whatever. I guess that's paying your dues in a way. So he picked up everybody for a body slam and, locked up with each guy that was there to see if they could sign up. And then, he would go around and talk to the guys personally. And when he came up to me, he's like, hey, so, I really want you here. I think you have a lot of potential. I was blown away, because this is a guy I was watching on TV and, I really respected. Of course, back then I wasn't smart to the fact that he went around and told everybody that.
Right.
So we went back and he told us the price to get trained. And I thought at that point that it was out of the question. Like I couldn't imagine my parents being able to afford it, or even if they were able to afford it, that they'd be willing to spend that much on wrestling training because, If
you don't mind me asking, how much was that?
It was $2,000 for 3 months and 3 classes a week.
Man,
which
that's pretty
now
damn
that
good.
I know, like now that I know how wrestling school works, it seems pretty much it's you know, it's in the price range of most places.
Damn right.
But this was back in 2000 or 1999, first of all, and also I just, you know, for parents of a 15-year-old kid, there's nothing as uncertain as a pro wrestling school. You know what I mean? It's not like, I want to play hockey. My brother was a big hockey player, so they would pay for his seasons and his equipment every year, and that was no problem. But then we went back, and I didn't even bother asking them. I thought immediately, as soon as he said the price, I remember my heart dropped. And I looked at my dad, and my dad just went like, it just gave me a nod, like, keep listening, you know. And then when we were driving back, they told me, listen, we're going to pay for you to do this. Wow. And I couldn't believe it. That's awesome. You know, it's not just the paying. It's at that point I couldn't drive, so they'd have to drive me up there and all this stuff, you know. But they did it. They were behind me 100%, and I really wouldn't be where I am today without them. So that's why in the email I mentioned how my dad was proud of, you know, hearing you talk about me. He saw me grow up on you, but he also followed me through my whole career, so that really meant something, you know. So I ended up being at the wrestling school for 3 years, from 1999 to 2003, and I had my first match May 7th, 2000, which was my 16th birthday.
So when you first started out, were you working heel or babyface?
I was total babyface. I was pretty short. I was pretty skinny, which is hard to believe if you look at me now, but I was. They actually called me the Kid because I looked like a child. Right. I looked maybe 13, you know. So I was the Kid, Kevin Steen, and yeah, that was my big thing. I had my first match May 7th, 2000, in front of I don't know, maybe 1,000 people, I'd say, which is pretty good for a first match, you know. Yeah. But that's how Rougeau worked. He would have the way he ran his school and his company, because he also ran his own company. He would have shows maybe every 3 or 4 months for his students. And he would bring in a name like around that time he was bringing Kurgan or King Kong Bundy a lot to wrestle him as the main event, and the rest of the undercard would all be his students. But you know, you would work once every 3 months, but you couldn't wrestle for any other indie companies like in Canada or in Quebec or anything like that. He would keep you very sheltered, because the way he would work is, you know, because his name held a certain esteem, you know, in Quebec, like it meant something to people. He would be able to get newspaper ads for his shows, and he would be able to book the bigger venues and actually have like 1,000 or 2,000 people in there. So he felt like if you are going around wrestling for companies that have 100 people and, you know, in a basement somewhere, that's not helping him, and that the exposure he's giving us, let's say with our face in the paper for his show, is helping other companies.
Right.
But the thing is, it was really, at that time we had no idea, but it wasn't helping us learn how to work and rest, you know what I mean? And he would have us like practice our matches for 3 months. Like 3 months in advance, he would be, okay, we have a show in May, it's February now, you are going to wrestle on the show, you're going to be opener, put a match together and I want to see it. And then we'd put a match together, and he would change what he didn't like, he would add stuff he wanted, and then we'd have to run through that match 3 times a week for 3 months until it was perfect, and then we'd do it at his show.
Man, that's unbelievable. You guys weren't calling it in the ring back then?
We wouldn't. He didn't want us to talk to each other in the ring. We couldn't talk to each other. Yeah, that's what he wanted.
When you signed up, I mean, did he smarten you up right off the bat?
You know, we were smartened up just by the logic. You know, my dad. Gotcha. You know, all that stuff. My dad had explained it to me because, you know, but obviously.
Yeah, but you know, just the inner workings. Hey,
he really didn't. That's the thing. Like, I didn't learn how to work, and I didn't learn how the business. You know, I didn't learn anything about the business with Jacques. He taught us how to wrestle the way he wanted us to wrestle. Like, he would teach us how to take a headlock in a way where the guy's head would be like down by our hip, and there'd be no way for us to communicate.
That's interesting, man. I tell you what, I did that when I broke into Dallas, Texas. I went down to Tennessee, my first night out there with the guy in a mask, and I grabbed a guy with a low headlock like that. When I came back, Dutch Mantell, who was the booker, ate my ass out because there was no way that I could listen to the guy call spots. So, yeah, it's very interesting that he would intentionally teach you to hold that low headlock. Because
he wanted it to, this is the weirdest thing about him too, is he didn't want people to be able to say, oh, look, they're talking to each other, or, oh, this is obviously fixed. So he was trying to keep some sort of kayfabe, but then he would have, he liked to call his show like a family show. Like, you know, like it was a show that the parents could take their kids at, and they wouldn't have to worry about seeing people swear or give the middle finger or like hardcore wrestling. It was always good, clean, family, like oriented fun.
I wouldn't have a chance there.
As a big fan of Steve Austin, it was kind of hard for me too. But I worked within the boundaries. But the thing is, he would have guys like dressed as Spider-Man, and he would call them like Spidey's son to get around the trademark.
Right.
But then he would try to keep kayfabe on other things. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's very, or one thing that he did actually is, sorry to cut you off, but he would let's say he would have a show the Friday and the Saturday in the same venue. He would advertise that, hey, the same matches are happening. It's the same show. Don't come twice. Or if you want to come twice, that's fine, but don't expect a different show. It's the exact same thing. So he's you know what I mean?
Yeah,
he was telling people, he was telling people it's the same finishes, it's the same matches, everything. But then he would try to keep kayfabe because he didn't want people to see us talking to each other in the ring.
Hey, Kevin, so on Twitter, you're Fight Steen Fight. Your website is kevinsteenwrestles.com, right?
Exactly, yeah.
You're listening to another classic episode of The Steve Austin Show, only on PodcastOne.
Hey, man, do you own or rent your home? Sure you do, and I bet it can be hard work. You know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
Hey y'all, this is producer Sean G back at you, here to tell you more about Concrete. Now, what is Concrete? It's what's been changing the game for me lately, health and fitness-wise, and all over, really. What is Concrete? It's the powerful nutrient creatine clinically proven to not just power muscles, but also power our immune system and our T cells. T cells are key to maintaining good health and are the first responders of your immune system. And creatine is not just for working out. I always assumed that it was just sort of a supplement strictly for working out and building muscles, but creatine is required for functional energy in every cell of your body. Immune cells need it to have the energy to fight off bad cells and protect the body. Heart cells need it to pump. Lung cells need it to breathe. Every cell must have creatine to function at its best. And that's why it's truly been changing the game for me in the gym and in the office. I feel a little sharper during meetings, and I feel a little more pep in my step when I'm in the gym. So, optimize your health and fitness, both body and mind. Build a better you with Concrete. And if you register now at concrete.com/podcast, you can win a free membership to Planet Fitness for an entire year, plus a $500 Walmart Visa gift card. That's con-cret.com/podcast to be one of multiple winners. And Concrete is now available online and in store at Walmart. Concrete is truly changing fitness and health.
All right, so I'm talking to Kevin Steen. With your schedule now, I mean, right now you're working with Ring of Honor, but you're also independent. You can basically go wherever you want, correct?
Wherever there's Ring of Honor, my contract with Ring of Honor keeps me from working some promotions that have iPay-per-views. But besides that, I'm open to absolutely anything. I can do whatever I want. I work all over the place every weekend, and I'm having a blast doing it.
So you've been in the business now since you were 16. You're about 29. You've got 14 years under your belt?
Yeah, but I would say more. For those first 3 years when I was wrestling under Rougeau, I kind of don't count those years just because I really didn't learn anything. You know what I mean? I was like a robot going through motion.
Well, mechanics.
Yeah, exactly.
Mechanics
so I feel like my career really started in 2003. That's the way I see it. When I broke off from Rougeau, that's when I feel I really started to be a wrestler. But if you want to, if you count from my first match on, then 2000. So I'm just about at 14 years.
But what I was getting to was, with coming up in that environment with kind of a scripted per se match, and with what you're doing now, I mean, you've got to be calling, a large part of it in the ring, maybe a fishbone of things is going to happen, but be able to work on the fly because, I mean, you're working with, many different folks on a week in, week out basis all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very different. I mean, I know Rougeau still has a company out there and he's still training people, and I would say that if anybody came from his company straight into, the Ring of Honor or PWGs or any other indie company now, they would get eaten alive just because they don't know how this really works. So I was lucky, you know. I started wrestling. I started getting a clue of how things really worked because when I broke off from Rougeau, I didn't immediately start in the States. I started wrestling around Montreal for other independent companies, and a lot of the guys that were wrestling there had left from Rougeau already. So I was friends with them, and they knew that I didn't know what I was getting myself into, so they kind of helped me out. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then so I slowly learned through that, and then Quebec companies started bringing guys from the United States, which was very foreign at the time. You know, like indie companies in the United States will bring people from all over. But in Quebec, it was almost like we were our own little territory. And, you know, bringing a guy from Ring of Honor in to wrestle on a Quebec show was unheard of until 2004, when a Quebec City company that doesn't run anymore brought Christopher Daniels in to wrestle me.
Right.
And then I started wrestling guys like Chris Daniels, and then a month later somebody brought Samoa Joe over, and Jerry Lynn, and AJ Styles, and I got to wrestle all of those guys almost like in a row. And I started seeing how different things really were, because those guys are awesome, and they saw that I had a good head on my shoulders, I think, and as clueless as I may have been, they were willing to help me.
Right.
So, and then they brought, in November of 2004, the same Quebec company brought Steve Corino in, and I wrestled him as well, and he was instrumental in me becoming who I am now. He helped me so much, and he still helps me to this day. I work with him in Ring of Honor on a regular basis, and he's become one of my best friends. So
now, how often are y'all taping Ring of Honor?
I'd say they have 2 to 3 shows a month, and sometimes they're house shows, but there's a TV taping every maybe 4 to 6 weeks, I'd say. There used to be iPay-per-views, but that's become now video on demand. Like this Saturday, there's a big Final Battle show. That's the biggest show of the year. It's in Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. And then Monday, it's going to be available on the ROH Wrestling website.
So you're on that card?
Yeah, I'm wrestling Michael Bennett in a stretcher match, actually. He's got this pile driver thing going where he gave a guy by the name of B.J. Whitmer a pile driver a couple months ago and just paralyzed him. It was actually very reminiscent of what happened to you. He was like, he couldn't feel half his body for a good 20 minutes and everything, and he was stretchered out, and ever since then, Mike Bennett's been bragging about his pile driver. I got my package pile driver, so now we have this match, and the loser can't use his pile driver anymore, so that's what's going on there.
Sounds pretty heavy duty. And,
yeah.
but when y'all are just doing the regular Ring of Honor tapings, where is that held at?
It depends. I mean, we were doing a lot of the TV tapings were happening out of Baltimore because that's where the office is situated. But now we're going all over the place. Let's say we'll have a show in Toronto on a Friday night, and the next day or a Saturday night, and then the Sunday we'll have a TV taping out of the same venue, or Chicago or New York. It's all over the place. We're going all around. Like it's the Northeast and the Midwest mostly. So.
Now, when you roll in there, I mean, you know, how's the booking? How much creative input do you have with your angle, what you want to do, promos, etc.?
Well, I've been in Ring of Honor since 2007, and like through those years, there's been 4 different bookers. So I would say that things are very different from one booker to another. You know, in 2007, I started working there, and Gabe Sapolsky was a booker.
Right.
And he would take input from the wrestlers, but he had his ideas, and he would usually stick to his guns about them. He really believed in his ideas, which is, you know, obviously is a respectable quality, but he would be open to hearing what guys had to say. And then after that, Adam Pearce came in, and while Adam was in charge, I came up with, because Generico and I were a team for a long time under Gabe, and I came up with an idea of me and Generico breaking up and doing a partner versus partner angle, but you know, we had twists and turns that aren't necessarily seen in usual partner versus partner angles, and we had it mapped out where it would last a whole year, which is, you know, unheard of nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we had Colt Cabana and Steve Corino on our side to help us as, like, you know, which was, I got to give credit to them. Like, they were willing to be, you know, supporting players to our angle. And those are 2 veterans, and those are 2 guys that Generico and I looked up to, you know, for years. So for those guys to be willing to take a bit of a back seat for our angle to work and to help us in our angle was, you know, amazing, and I have to give them credit. And also I got to give Adam Pearce credit, because when I pitched it to him, he was hesitant, but he saw how much passion I had when I pitched it, and he got on board with it. And from that point on, he was behind us, where if we needed something to happen on a certain show, he would make sure it would happen on that show. You know, if he had to change something so that our angle would work there, he would do it. So it was awesome, and I think the angle came off really well. I mean, I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but people still talk about it to this day, and I think this was in 2010. It lasted a whole year, and I think that's what kept people interested in Ring of Honor. Like, obviously, there were so many guys having great matches every show, but I felt like the angle was what people kept coming back for. You know, they knew they'd get the great wrestling, but they were curious to see what the next step was going to be.
Well,
that
was the Wrestling Observer newsletter feud of the year for 2010,
yes,
correct?
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Obviously, if Dave Meltzer liked it, it had to be pretty damn decent. He gave me -3.5 stars on a scaffold match. I'm still pissed off at him to this day. Also, he names you as the best brawler of 2010-2012.
I'm doing all right there, too.
How did you come up with your style? I mean, first of all, like I said, you know, if you go to the top 95 moves of Kevin Steen, you see a lot of highlight moves. But just as far as your work style, obviously you're well-versed, you're very athletic, but how did you come up with your style? Who influenced that? Or how did you just, you know, turn into Kevin Steen?
Well, to be honest, first of all, it's going to sound like I'm kissing your ass, but I was a huge Steve Austin fan. I've mentioned that already. So your style was a huge influence on me. But what happened is when I started wrestling on the indies, like you said, you know, I would do a little high flying and stuff like that.
Right.
But I started wrestling this guy called Super Dragon. He runs Pro Wrestling Guerrilla out in California, but back in the day in 2004, 2005, he would wrestle, you know, in Philly for CZW and other companies like that. And I met him, and, you know, Generico and I kind of got to know him, and he decided to start bringing us in for PWG, which was a huge deal. You know, Generico and I had never been flown anywhere for anything, and he was paying for a flight for us to go to California. Like, I remember on the way to the airport, we were both blown away. We couldn't believe it. And we went over there, and we did pretty good. And then out of that, I started feuding with him. His character was he's Super Dragon. He wore like a dragon-like outfit and a dragon-like mask, but he could do it all. But he was also a pretty big brawler. And through that feud, I feel like I really shaped who I've become now, and I give him a ton of credit because if you watch his stuff, you'll actually see where I got a lot of my influence from. He doesn't wrestle anymore, but he was just a big influence, and Steve Corino helped shape me a lot too, just from, you know, me working with him and him being so instrumental to, like, he brought me to Japan for the first time in 2005. And
well, talk about Japan for a second, because a lot of the stuff that I see as well reminds me of Japan, and especially those kind of forms that you use so much. How do you like Japan, and how successful have you been over there? Because just me watching, and from what I do know, it just seems you would be a perfect fit for that style.
Yeah, well, the first time I went was through Steve Corino, was for 01. I only went for one show, one day. I was there for 2 days, but one show, and it was for 01. I did pretty good there, and they told me they'd eventually bring me back, which never ended up happening. But then in late 2006, through PWG, they started working with Sima, who wrestles for Dragon Gate over there in Japan, and I sent him a tape, and he immediately offered me a 2-month tour. So they would say, you know, I'd live at this place they call the Sanctuary, which is a little apartment inside of their building where there's like a training dojo and there's the offices of the company. So I said yes, obviously. So I was over there for 2 months. I wrestled. Out of those 2 months, I wrestled. Spent about half the time wrestling. You know, we'd have 25 shows over 50 days. So half the time I was off. So as much as I enjoyed the experience of wrestling over there, I wasn't too crazy about the days off, you know what I mean? Because I was in Japan and I don't speak the language and I don't know anybody there. And I really enjoyed myself there, and I think I did pretty good. Like, they offered me a full-time spot after, in terms of if any time I wanted to come back, they would book me for however long I wanted to be there for. But when I came home, I decided that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to live in Japan. You know, when I was a kid coming up and trying to, you know, dreaming of being a pro wrestler, I wanted to do it here. So I respectfully turned them down and ended up starting with Ring of Honor, and that's when really, like, things took off for me here. I had already been wrestling for PWG for a couple of years, and they were great. But when Ring of Honor, when I got back to Ring of Honor, I think that's where I really got hot. And I haven't been back to Japan since. But the experience I had there was extremely valuable, and I would never change anything about it.
Now, would you go back if someone threw down a call?
I don't think so, honestly. I don't think so. Also, a lot of it is, my son was born a couple months after I came back from Japan.
Oh, gotcha.
And I don't mind leaving for 3-4 days, but going over there for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I don't know. I'm not, I'm not really into it. I don't know.
You're listening to another classic episode of The Steve Austin Show, only on PodcastOne.
Hey, man, do you own or rent your home? Sure you do, and I bet it can be hard work. You know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com. Talk about you. So your dad, and I tell you what, when I was on the road, hot and heavy with WWF back in the day, man, I missed a large part of my kids' lives, and I certainly never won Father of the Year when I was having my run in WWF. But I was doing what I was doing, so obviously it's great that that's important to you. But you're 29 now. You've got a lot left in the tank. If you'd like to stay in the game, how long do you see yourself continuing to do this?
As long as I can make a living out of it. And, we've got a good balance now, me and my wife and my son. He's used to me leaving 3-4 days, and she's used to it as well. And, we're expecting a little girl in April, actually. So, but, we have it down. Like, back then I would say we didn't have it down. When my kid was just born, this was new to her, it was new to me. So it was harder to go away for extended periods of time. But now, she's great. She supports me in everything I do, and she's, I wouldn't be able to do it without her. And my son, that's the thing, my son is proud of what I do. You know what I mean? So that means a lot to me. And I want to keep doing it, and I want to keep doing it on as big a stage as I can. So for as long as my body keeps up with me and as long as I make a living, I think I'll be around for a while. You know what I mean?
When you watch, do you watch TNA or do you watch WWE?
I watch WWE. I catch TNA once in a while, but not as regularly as I do WWE.
Things have changed a lot with their work style versus your work style. So what do you see when you watch Monday Night Raw these days? I
really enjoy it. I feel like I don't know. I'll give an example of Daniel Bryan. I remember watching his matches in Ring of Honor, and I feel they were very different than what he does on WWE TV now. But at least now he's doing more, he's doing a lot more wrestling than he was a couple months ago. But I feel like he was so different, and as enjoyable as the Ring of Honor stuff was, I get a huge kick out of seeing them perform in that environment. I have so many friends there now, like Seth Rollins from The Shield, and, Bryan, and Antonio Cesaro, and I see all those guys, and they're doing really well under that umbrella. And while it's very different, I feel like there's something there, it's changing people's minds, and I think that's really commendable. And if anything, that's a huge it's a huge inspiration for me too. I really like what I see, and I don't need a match to be a 25-minute classic to enjoy it. You know what I mean? My matches rarely go above 15 minutes just because I like to wrestle for what I find is fun, and I'm just not that kind of guy, So I enjoy Raw, the wrestling, the matches. I enjoy what I see, and I really enjoy seeing those guys who, if you watched them in Ring of Honor a couple years ago, you wouldn't have figured that they would adapt so well to what they do over there, but they're killing it, So that's really great to see.
On Twitter, you're at Fight Steen Fight.
Yeah.
Tell me about at Fight Steen Fight now, and who is Kevin Steen once the bell rings?
Well, to be honest, I don't think there's much of a difference between me in the ring and me in real life. I'm snarky, and when you gave me that advice of never, don't stop running your mouth, it was almost like a moment where I realized, oh my God, he's right, and also, why haven't I been doing this all along? Because I've always had that in me, you know what I mean? I'm a smart ass and stuff like that, and I like, you were talking about my style and all that stuff. I like brawls. I love watching brawls. I like that stuff. I enjoy technical wrestling matches as much as the next guy, but I really get into it when there's a brawl and fists are flying and stuff's flying around and shit's getting broken, shit's just going down and chaos. I get into that a lot, and I implement that in my wrestling style. I talk a lot of shit too, and it always works good for me. I'll have people come up to me after shows, and even though they've never seen me before, they'll tell me after the show that I'm what they're going to take away from the show, either because of how crazy and chaotic the match was, or just because of how big of a smartass I am. But I'm like that in real life too. Obviously, I'm not gonna, break tables and just throw people in a shopping cart or anything like that when I'm walking around. But I'll get a little intense when I'm driving and somebody cuts me off, and I'll let them fly, But that's just the way I am. My son's actually, I'm a terrible influence on my son, and I should be, because if he's in the car with me and I get cut off, I don't have a filter. I'll start letting, fuck and shit and all that stuff. And he's 6 years old. I shouldn't be doing that. But he's gotten to the point where he tells me, hey, you can't say that stuff.
Right.
So that's really good. I mean, it's good that he just doesn't start saying himself. He'll let one slip once in a while, and it's always pretty funny. But he's got a better head on his shoulders than I do for that stuff. But I'm pretty close to in real life to what I am in the ring, honestly.
So let's talk about promos then for a second. You get a promo, Ring of Honor. Someone puts a microphone in front of your mouth. You start flapping your gums. Is this something that you wrote for yourself? Are you just flying off by the seat of your pants? Or, where are you coming from on a promo?
No, I rarely think of what I'm going to say in advance, honestly. I let it fly. And sometimes I feel like that might actually play against me in a way, because I feel like if I watch back a promo or two, I'll feel like I went around a couple of times more than I needed to get to the point. But I usually feel like it's much more, it just comes off more real if I don't think of what I'm about to say. So I just, I live in the moment, and it usually works out pretty good. I mean, we were talking about Dave Meltzer earlier, but he's, in the last couple of years, in his Wrestling Observer Awards, I was ranked with, I was never first, but I was 4 or 5 behind, The Rock and Chris Jericho and guys like that. So I'll take it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how you feeling these days? You're 29. How's getting out of bed?
It's pretty easy. I feel pretty good, honestly. For a guy who's done, a lot of the stuff I did, and in 2010, 2011, especially with the whole angle with Generico, and then when I came back to Ring of Honor after, I was doing a lot of, street fights and all that kind of stuff, and ladder matches and all that stuff. You would think I'd be a lot more banged up than I am, but I'm not. I don't know. I guess I'm lucky, I would say. I don't know if it's going to catch up to me with time, but a lot of people have told me it should have caught up to you by now, and it still hasn't. I feel pretty good. I'd say I feel as good as I was when I was 20, honestly.
Can you name a specific match that you're the most proud of?
Yeah, I mean, I had one match with Generico out of that whole feud. It was in March of 2011, probably, yeah. Oh, no, 2012, actually. March of 2012. It was during the WrestleMania weekend. Ring of Honor always runs around where WrestleMania is, like every other indie company in the world now, basically. Sure. But they had this called Showdown in the Sun Night 1, and it was in Fort Lauderdale. And Generico and I had a last man standing there that I think probably was probably our best match together, honestly. I really like that one a lot. And there's another one that's happened in Toronto for Ring of Honor as well, Northern Navigation. It was me versus Nigel McGuinness. He was a champion at the time. And we went this. That's one of the matches where we went 25, 30 minutes, maybe even I think 33 minutes. And it's not the kind of match that people would expect me to have, because Nigel's a real technical guy, and I'm really proud of that one too, just because of how it came off and just the crowd in it and just everything. So those two, I'd say, are probably two of the ones that when people ask me that, those are always the ones that come back to me, honestly.
When you go to a show these days, I mean, most of the guys, maybe you've worked around the horn with a time or two. If you're working with a guy you've never worked with before, what's the process for you? You guys going to chat a little bit? Most of the guys on the independent circuit are good hands. How is the training these days out there?
I mean, I would say really good. I haven't ran, and I can't remember off the top of my head ever wrestling somebody I didn't know and, you know, that I thought, oh, man, this guy was awful. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think everybody's pretty good at what they do. And, you know, I work in a lot of promotions, and a lot of the companies I work for, like Ring of Honor and PWG and 2CW, which runs all over New York State, and, you know, NSPW up in Quebec City, I wrestle pretty regularly at all those companies. You know, I have my you know, I like to call home companies, I guess. So there would be four of them. It would be those. And now I'm wrestling more and more for Beyond Wrestling, which runs in Rhode Island. Everybody there, all those guys are obviously very competent, because I don't think they would be there if they weren't. You know what I mean? Like, I think the guys that aren't where they should be, or aren't as good at, or as experienced as they should be for those spots, just kind of get weeded out with time.
Hey, man, what do you, didn't mean to cut you off, what do you do for kicks, dude? What do you do for hobbies? What do you do to relax? If you're not wrestling, if you're not hanging out with your family and your wife, your kid, what other things are you passionate about?
Well, a pretty well-known fact about me is that I'm a zoo enthusiast. I don't know if that rings a bell for you, but I am a big fan of going to the zoo.
What's your favorite animal?
I love animals. I have 3 cats and a dog right now locked into my bedroom because I don't want them to make noise during the interview.
I know. I got 3 dogs here in Hershey. My dog is snoring over here on the bed behind me. I have myself. What's your favorite animal at the zoo?
I don't have a favorite, honestly. I'm a big fan of all of them, but what I like, I guess it would be pandas. Like, those are pretty, they're not too common in Canada. There's only one zoo in Canada that has it. It's Toronto Zoo now, and they opened their exhibit in May of this year, so I took a booking on a Thursday night near Toronto, just so that I could drive up there with my wife and my son, and the next day spend the whole day at the zoo and go see some pandas.
So one of the toughest cats in a squared circle in the world, and your favorite animal is the panda.
Yeah, but you know what?
You heard it here
I actually have
Steve Austin show.
One of the best-selling T-shirts, T-shirts, Kevin Steen T-shirts, has a panda on it, believe it or not.
So you have a website, KevinSteenWrestles.com, and you also have a YouTube channel. It's called The Kevin Steen, and you do Kevin's Weekend Escapades. Talk about these escapades.
Yeah, basically it's just an idea I had. I'll give credit where credit is due here. Colt Cabana is one of my best buddies, and you've met Colt, you've talked, you had him on a podcast, and you were on his. Yep. He's a great guy, and he's an innovator, and he's like a self-made guy, you know, and he's a big influence on me in pretty much everything I'm doing now. Even having, you know, the merchandise and the T-shirts and DVDs, I didn't have any of that back in the day. You know, I would just wrestle, get my payday for my match, and leave and come home with what I had left. But he, you know, Colt's a marketing machine, and he has all this merch, and he would always tell me, you got to get merch, you got to get merch. And I never listened to him until recently, and, you know, the past year, those T-shirts and those DVD sales have helped me and my family have a better life. But it doesn't stop there. You know, he told me back in the day, you got to get a Twitter. You know, he was on Twitter for months before I got one. He's the one who told me, you got to get a Twitter. What are you doing? So I got a Twitter. And, you know, that's where I feel like actually my Twitter account has helped me reach a lot of people that I wouldn't have reached otherwise. And then, you know, he started his podcast, and now I do this thing called the Kevin Steen Show, which is an interview series I do for High Spots, where I just sit down with one of my wrestling friends, and we just shoot the shit for about 2 hours. High Spots records it and puts it out on DVD. You could call it shoot interviews if you want, but it's really not. It's a lot like what you're doing too, but it's inspired from Colt's, you know, Art of Wrestling podcast. And the Weekend Escapades, I would say, are inspired from Colt's Wrestling Road Diaries, which is a DVD he put out. It was him, Brian Danielson, and Sal Renaro going around to various indie shows over the span of a week or two, and they were just recording everything they were doing. So, you know, Colt had told me, you got to get your YouTube channel, you know, you got to start making something out of that YouTube channel. So I decided, well, I'm just going to record myself every weekend, you know. And at the same time, it became a thing where my wife now gets to see what I'm up to on weekends, and she really enjoys it, and it's something I'll be able to show my kid when he's older, you know.
Yeah.
And it's basically me going around recording, You know, I started out with I'm driving to the airport or I'm driving to the show, and I'm recording myself talking about what happened that week and where I'm going and why I'm going there. And then it's just me with the boys, and whatever happens, happens. I get a little bit of wrestling on there. Like I try to get some footage from the show I'm on, try to help them out. I put it on, and then, you know, I edit I edit it all together at the end, and I put it up every week.
What are you filming that on?
Just my iPhone.
Really?
Yeah, I use my iPhone for everything, and I have this program on there called iMovie.
Yeah.
I use that to edit it, and it works great.
So how long do these things last?
Between 10 to, I have some that are 10 minutes, some are 20. I had one, I went to England a couple weeks ago. That one was like 33 minutes, and it includes Jushin Liger slapping me in the face, so it's a good time.
Was that a shoot or work?
Well, what happened is, you know, I try, whenever I can, I try to get, you know, if there's somebody famous on the show, I try to get them on the Weekend Escapades.
Right.
So I went up to Jushin Liger, and I had wrestled him back in Dragon Gate in 2006, but I don't think he remembered me at all, you know. So I told him, Liger-san, do you think we could do something for YouTube? He's like, okay. So I say, I told him, I'm going to come up to you and say, hey, remember when you gave me a palm strike in 2006? And then you could give me a palm strike. He's like, okay. But I said, you know, nobody's going to see the palm strike because I'm holding the phone a certain way, so you can hit me in the chest. Nobody will know because this was in the back, right? So he's like, okay. So I go up to him, and there's the promoter and a couple other wrestlers there. I go up to him with the iPhone, and I go, hey, Liger-san, remember the palm strike in 2006? And he goes, oh, palm strike? See. And I don't know why he said see, but he did. He slapped me across the face like there was 1,000 people there. The iPhone flew, hit the ground, came out of its case, but it never stopped recording. It was perfect. And then I thanked him, because why not? You know, why wouldn't I? And that was it. He slapped the shit out of me, but it was good footage, that's for sure.
So how long does it take you to edit a show and get it ready to go?
I mean, sometimes I procrastinate and I don't do it right away, but in reality, as I'm filming it, I could just put it on that program and edit it all. Like this week, I only had one show Saturday night, but I had it out by Monday during Raw because, you know, that's the peak hour for people on Twitter. So I send the link out during Raw on Twitter, and people watch it. But sometimes I can have it up to Thursday, or sometimes I can have the Monday right after the weekend. But it really doesn't take me much time at all. If I have it up late, it's because I'm kind of being lazy, honestly.
Well, then I'm going to check it out. I'm going to get on YouTube.
Please do. Yeah,
Kevin Steen
there's
YouTube
about 30
channel.
of them out there right now. Yeah.
All right, it's the Weekend Escapades. Hey, let's go back just a second before we wrap this thing up. I want to talk to you about merchandise, swag, T-shirts, all that stuff. You said that was, you know, a big part of being able to make money. I saw, you know, a couple of your shirts as I was, you know, doing some looking on YouTube as well. And there was one shirt, help me with this. It was violence, brutality, devastation.
Destruction, yeah.
Destruction.
Yeah.
So that rings a bell with me. That resonates. I dig that. So your idea, somebody else's idea?
It was kind of my idea. You know, the rise above hate or something that
right.
John Cena had for a while. I was looking for a shirt to make, and I don't know. I liked his T-shirt, but I figured maybe I could kind of rip it off and make it my own, you know? So then, back then, I was going with the Kill Steen Kill. That was my Twitter handle. But after a while, I felt like that was, honestly, I just felt like that was wrong. Like, I felt like
right.
there was too much killing going around anyway in the world, so I changed it to Fight Steen Fight.
I agree.
But the original was Kill Steen Kill. Now it's Fight Steen Fight, and in the back, you know, his says hustle, loyalty, respect. So I was like, well, how am I going to make it my own? And then I thought of 3 words that describe me in the ring, and violence, brutality, destruction just fit perfectly, and it's worked pretty well for me so far. I think it's probably, besides the Panda one, the best-selling Kevin Steen shirt would be the violence, brutality, destruction ones.
Man, when I used to ride down the road, this is back in the day, you know, I'm going back over 10, 11 years when I was still in the ring, and guys wore fanny packs and credit cards, receipts, Sharpies, pens, you know, all the bullshit that you need for the road. But I kept a Sharpie and a piece of paper in there because anytime I'd be riding down the road, if I saw a billboard or anything that sparked my creative brain to start spinning, I'd write an idea for a T-shirt down. Do you ever do that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. That's why I kind of end up, you know, I like ripped off the John Cena idea and stuff like that. I'm not, it's weird. As creative as I can be for angles and wrestling and moves, I have a hard time coming up with creative stuff for T-shirts. So I do try to do that, but it unfortunately doesn't come to me quite as easily. But I've actually had this idea a couple of days ago where I would say maybe Steen and then, I don't know, 360, maybe Steen 360. Something I'm working on,
Yeah, maybe it'll work, maybe not. So anyway, Kevin, we're talking on Wednesday. The show drops tomorrow, Thursday. Yep. You've got a big show coming up. Let's talk about that one more time.
Yeah, Saturday night. It's a Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. It's Final Battle for Ring of Honor. It's the biggest show of the year. It's going to be online for everybody to watch it by Monday or Tuesday on the ROHWrestling.com. I'm also wrestling in Brooklyn on Sunday for the Maximo Brothers. I'm wrestling Colt Cabana, actually, which we really rarely get to do, so I'm pretty excited about that. And then next Friday and Saturday, I'm in Reseda, California for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. And that's a company like no other in pro wrestling these days. So anybody who can check it out, I highly recommend it.
Why do you say that about Pro Wrestling Guerrilla?
There's just something about that place, that venue, and those fans, and the wrestling there that's magical. Like, it's hard to put into words, honestly. You'd almost have to see it for yourself, but it's the crowd. It's a tiny venue. It fits about 400, and when there's 400 people in there, it is packed, like standing room only. And everybody's there to have a good time, and they'll react the same to a guy they've never seen before than they would to a guy that has been there for 10 years. They appreciate everything you do, and I don't know. Honestly, I think they're the best fans in the world, and it sounds very corny to say, but it's the truth. And everybody who wrestles there says the same thing after. Like on the independent scene, you ask an indie guy, where do you want to work that you haven't had the chance to work yet, and 99% of them will say PWG in California. So
but there's something about being
special.
There's something about being in a smaller venue with it packed to the gills, and there's just that intimate feel relationship with the crowd. And man, I dig some of those smaller buildings. You said that is in Reseda?
Yeah, it's in Reseda, California. Yeah.
Here's a quick question before we leave. I talked with Colt Cabana, and of course, Colt has his podcast, which many of you are familiar with, Art of Wrestling. And so I know that Colt works, he's a very versatile worker, but he works a lot of comedy stuff. So obviously, you're a little bit on the opposite end of that spectrum. What can we expect from this matchup between yourself and Colt Cabana?
To be honest, I am a part of that spectrum, though. I mean, while Colt will, implement his comedy and his wrestling, and it'll be, cute stuff and funny stuff and more of a playful kind of comedy, I have the whole violence, brutality, destruction thing, but as I do that, I'm pretty good at throwing smart-ass comments out there, and, I get a few laughs here and there, so it's pretty interesting contrast of styles, but I think people will end up getting a pretty big kick out of the match for sure.
You got two veterans out there. Who's calling the match? Who's leading the charge?
I'm definitely going to be listening on this one for sure.
You heard it here first. I've been talking to Kevin Steen. You can follow him on Twitter at FightSteenFight. His website is KevinSteenWrestles.com because that's what he does. You can check him out on YouTube on his YouTube channel, The Kevin Steen, and check out his weekend escapades. Hey, Kevin, man, it's been good talking to you. I appreciate you coming on the show.
It's an absolute honor for you to have me here. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, I wish y'all luck in the world, man. Safe travels and flat back landings. I'll catch you down the road.
Awesome. Thank you.
This has been a Podcast One production. Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.
Hi there, and welcome to The Inevitable. This is our new podcast where we're talking about the future of the car. This means everything from electrified vehicles to cars that drive themselves. Where are we going and how will we get there? I'm Johnny Lieberman from Motor Trend, joined by
Ed Lowe, and we are going to talk to some amazing guests. We have Reggie Watts, we have Sung Kang, we have James Marsden, we have Spike Feresten, Kristen Lee, Derek Jenkins, a whole bunch of actors, celebrities, car crazy folks, people from in and outside the industry. It's going to be great, and you can find it on PodcastOne.com or anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. We're also doing a video series as well. That's on motortrend.com/The Inevitable or on youtube.com/motortrend. Come join us.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy, Big Brother Jake, a.k.a. Jake Warner, my government name. Check it out. I host a show called the Big Brother Jake Podcast, and I've taken my talents to the biggest and baddest platform on the planet. That's right, baby, PodcastOne. My show is unique as I talk about everything. Life, sports, entertainment, being a single dad juggling several jobs. I'm a hot mess, but it's damn entertaining. Subscribe and review now on Apple Podcasts and listen on PodcastOne or wherever you get your podcasts.